Hey guys, welcome back to your Lake Fork Guide, another episode of the Guides Network. It may not look or feel like it here lately, but it is springtime and fish are getting shallow. Even caught some spawning fish while we were out filming today in 55-degree water. I guess the bass are about as tired of waiting on it as we are, so we might as well cover a topic that is one of the most important things you can know and be good at and really be adept at knowing how to do this technique when we get to this time of year, when the fish get shallow amongst all this heavy cover of shallow like they like to do when they're spawning. So today we're going to talk about proper technique and really go in depth on how to be efficient at flipping and pitching. All right, guys, when I'm flipping and pitching, you can do that with a lot of different baits. In the springtime, I like to keep baits kind of short and compact. I don't like the long worms and stuff like that because fish do tend to, when they're around beds or thinking about being on bed, they tend to bite the tail of your bait and not get the whole bait. So I like my baits to be a little bit shorter and compact. So a shaky head's a great bait to flip and pitch around shallow cover, but I like to put something like the old, back in the day, LFT crawl tube or a little baby brush hog or just some type of little small compact creature bait on a shaky head is a good option. Texas rigs with the same small creature baits are another good option. Probably my favorite though is the 3/8 ounce hybrid jig in any type of a natural greenish brownish color. This particular color is Grass Mutant. It's basically green pumpkin with some pumpkin seed and a little bit of a blue sheen to it. Looks a lot like a brim, which is a bass's natural enemy once we get to this time of year. That's a smash crawl for a trailer. You can really use any type of little creature bait that you want to for a trailer, as long as it kicks. The key is making it nice and short and compact. As you can see there, there's only a couple of inches of bait below the hook. When you're flipping and pitching, you want a big rod. You want a powerful rod to help you manage the fish in all this heavy cover. This right here is a 7/4 heavy. This is a brand new line of rods. It's a brand new series of rods coming out from 6 Cents later this year. Hasn't even been released yet, but this thing is absolute dynamo. It's so light and so balanced, as you can see. Big component also is going to be your line when you're dealing with heavy cover. Now if you're fishing extremely heavy vegetation, lily pad stems, hydrilla, something like that, I've got no problem going to braid. Today we have some sparse hydrilla in front of this cover that you see behind me, but we've got a lot of these buggy whip cattail type stalks in this lake that we're fishing today. I'm going to go to fluorocarbon whenever I can feel like I can land a high percentage of my fish on fluorocarbon. I don't want to use braid unless I absolutely have to. The reason that is my choice is that braid, you can hear it when you reel it through your line, guys. It makes that wispy sound. It makes a lot of noise whenever that braid runs across something. Well, every time you flip that bait in there, when it falls, if it hits one of these cattail stalks, or if it hits a stem of grass or a lily pad stem, it makes a very similar noise. I don't like making noise, especially when I'm in shallow water. The last thing is a high-speed gear ratio reel. When you're flipping and pitching, those fish are going to bite that bait and they kind of have nowhere to come but towards you. So you need to be able to pick up a lot of slack and catch up to them. You're also not moving the bait with your reel handle, you're moving it with your rod tip. So it doesn't matter that the gear ratio is fast. It's not going to affect the way you work the bait. It's just going to help you get caught up to those fish and get them in the boat that much faster. Now let's get to the meat of this video and let's show you guys the proper technique and how to be more efficient at the actual flipping and pitching. All right, so flipping or pitching, flipping is technically not what we refer to. I call it flipping just like everybody else does. Flipping is actually when you take your line out like this right here and you flip to real close targets like that right there and you just ease the bait into the water. It's a very rare situation these days when I'm actually doing that. Usually what I'm doing is actually technically called pitching. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. First thing you need to know, it's not intimidating, guys. If you've never done it, it's a really easy thing to do. You just have to kind of know the basics, know the fundamentals of it, and then just get a little comfortable with it. It may take you a couple days to get familiar with it, but it's a really effective technique. You can get your bait in tight areas really quietly if you do it correctly. First thing you need to know, the less line I have out, the higher that bait will come out when I pitch it. The more line I have out, the lower that bait will fly out when I pitch it. A good starting point is going to be to get your bait basically even with your reel right there. Now, the number one common mistake I see is people want to load their rod up and like slingshot the bait out there. That is not what you do. It is simply a pendulum motion. You don't even have to hold the bait to pitch, and I'll show you that right now. As you saw right there, you don't need to hold the bait at all. Like I wasn't even touching the bait and I made the pitching motion. All the pitching motion is, it's real simple. If you hold on to your bait like this, remember, don't put tension on it. Don't load it up. Just hold the bait, drop your rod tip, and then drop your bait and raise your rod tip at the same time. That easy. Now the big deal about this is trying to be as quiet as you can. You want that bait to come out as low and soft to the water as you can. And one little trick that you can do right before that bait lands, if you feather that spool to a stop right before the bait hits the water, it'll stop all the forward momentum of the bait, you know, going super soft. As you can see right there, that bait made hardly any splash. It made no noise at all. And like I said, guys, noise is a big deal when you're fishing shallow water in the springtime, especially because the fish tend to want to be in the cleaner water to spawn. So you're in clear, shallow water, noise is a big deal. So that's an important technique. Feathering that thumb, bring that thing to a soft stop and let it ease into the water. Accuracy, guys, this is something you can practice at home in your backyard anytime you want to. You can play with different amounts of line out on your reel handle up here, down here, but just try to get super accurate. Like if I'm gonna pitch to these stalks over here, I want to be right up against them. I don't want to miss it even by, you know, more than a couple, 3 inches. So we'll pick that point clump out right there. We'll see how close we can get that jig to it. Right there in the point of that grass. That's exactly how you want it. It needs to be literally a circle that big as your target. So if you can't get that accurate, you need to get in that backyard and get to practicing. The reason it's important to be tight to your target is because these fish are target oriented when they're in the shallow water in the springtime. They're always going to spawn right up next to something. In this lake right here, they're going to be spawning right up in these gaps and these cattail clumps right here, buggy whip clumps, whatever they are. If there was stumps like there is out on Lake Fork, our home lake, you're going to want to pitch right next to those stumps because those bass are going to spawn right next to them, and you don't want to miss that by very much, because spawning bass, if you miss the target by just a few inches, they'll just look at your bait and never react to it. All right, now let's talk about skipping a bait. We called this flipping and pitching, but we are going to show you how to skip too. That's a little more complicated. That takes a lot more practice. It can take a lot to get used to. So skipping is very similar to the pitching or flipping. The amount of line that you have out off the end of your rod affects the height at which the bait will fly out of there. Now that's very important, because when you're skipping, the number one thing that you're trying to accomplish is to make that bait fly as close to and parallel with the water for as long as possible. So that bait needs to come out low and hot for you to skip that bait up under targets. When you're skipping though, it's the opposite direction. So earlier we said the more line you had out, the lower it comes out. The less line you had out, the higher it comes out. On skipping, it's actually the opposite. The more line you have out, the higher the bait will come out when you roll cast it to skip it. So right there, that bait will come out pretty high, higher than I would want it to. The less line I have out, like something like that right there, the lower that bait's going to come out. Now, settings are very important, okay? So when I'm setting my reel up to skip, one thing that I want to do, the first thing I want to do is my centrifugal brake right here, I want to max it out. That's very important. So we're going to dial this thing all the way to max. If I can get it to turn. All right, so we've got our centrifugal brake maxed out. Now, the tension knob, go ahead and tighten it all the way till your bait won't drop at all. And then all you're gonna do is start loosening until it barely falls. Like that right there. And then when it hits the water, it doesn't backlash without thumbing it. And then I'm going to take it from there, okay, and I'm going to try to turn it about a quarter turn back from that. You want that to be a little bit looser than normal when you're skipping a bait, because that centrifugal brake will help you keep from overrunning it. Now, your thumb's very important in this. You need to keep a tight thumb. One thing to always remember, if it starts getting a little loose and a little out of control, when you're skipping a bait back into some cover, you can always stop it short and try again on the next cast. But if you let it go all the way in there and you mess your spool up, you just runt that spot, you runt that cast, everything's a waste. So what I'm going to do here is make a roll cast like this here and try to get that bait flying. If you look at my rod, focus on my rod down here. If you look at my rod, I'm going to cast in this motion here and get that bait flying low and parallel to the water as much as possible. As you see right there, if we would have had a target right there to go under, that bait would have skipped a good 12-15 feet up under the target. You know, this comes in handy. Keep it on me, dog. This comes in handy in a lot of situations in the springtime because, you know, these fish are getting real shallow. And a lot of these lakes are at full pull in the spring. We get a lot of rain in the early winter or late winter and early springtime. And so you'll have flooded cover. You'll have overhanging trees. Bedfish love to get up under something that's overhanging on the bank line. We actually ran into a situation today where we had to skip every cast in to catch this fish off a bed.
Getting all excited.
She bit it again. I'm gonna make her hold it this time. Off a bed. So you never know when you're gonna need it. It's an important tool to have right now, but just keep it low to the water, skip it on back there. All right, guys, so practice those techniques, get a fishing at them. Get out here and enjoy this time of year where there's some of the biggest bass you'll ever see up in this shallow cover like this. It's a great time of year to get out there. You never know, any flip, pitch, skip could be the fish of your lifetime. The biggest fish in the lake are up there doing their thing. So get out, take advantage of it, practice these techniques, get real efficient at them, and I hope it helps you catch a new personal best. Hey, want to thank all of our people that help us so much. 6 cents with the new rods are coming out with, best hard baits in the business. This is the hybrid jig, the 6 cents hybrid jig. That's my preferred skipping bait. That's my favorite bait to skip. When you're learning how to skip, by the way, a jig is the very easiest thing to learn on. So go over there to 6centsfishing.com. They're linked in the description as always. Get yourself some hybrid jigs, whatever else you may need. When you do that, be sure you punch in that code, your Lake Fork Guide, on the checkout screen down there in the promo box. You'll get a 10% discount on all orders. Smash Tech baits as well. Smash Crawl is a great jig trailer from when you're doing that. Swim baits are a big thing in the spring. Check out SmashTechBaits.com. They're linked in the description as well. We sure appreciate each and every one of you guys watching. We sincerely hope this helps you, and we'll see you next time right here on your Lake Fork Guide.